A few weeks ago, I decided to surprise my wife with a kid-free night out. My parents live about an hour and a half away from us, and I arranged for the kids to stay with them for the weekend. Usually when I visit my parents, I stay until late in the evening. We spend the whole day there and leave around dinner time. This time, however, I plan to drop the kids off and return home right away to surprise my wife so we could go out as soon as possible. I had made a reservation at a nice restaurant and hoped we could visit a few places for drinks beforehand. I left at 8:30 in the morning and was back in our neighborhood by 12:30 in the afternoon. As I turned onto our street, I noticed a truck parked in front of our house. I didn't recognize the vehicle, but I assumed it was someone visiting the neighbors, since it's not uncommon for people to park in front of our place. I parked a few houses down and decided to sneak into the house to surprise my wife. Rather than pulling into the driveway and going through the garage, I entered through the basement door, trying to be as quiet as possible. But as soon as I stepped inside, I heard unusual sounds coming from the floor above. At first, I thought my wife was just by herself, perhaps having some private time. I didn't want to interrupt her and cause embarrassment, so I considered going back to my car and entering through the garage to let her know I was home. But then I heard a man's voice and my heart sank. It's hard to describe the emotions I felt in that moment. I decided to go upstairs. I didn't want to confront them. I just needed to understand what was happening. Moving slowly and silently, I made my way up the stairs. The kitchen door was slightly ajar. The kitchen was empty, but it was clear from the sounds that they were in the living room. The nature of the sounds left no doubt about what was going on. There was no way to see into the living room without being seen. I took out my phone and opened the camera app. Carefully, I positioned my phone around the corner of the wall. This part is especially difficult to write. I saw my wife with a man I didn't recognize. I won't go into explicit details, but you can guess what was happening. I started recording, thinking I might need evidence for whatever I decided to do later. I stood there in the kitchen, watching everything unfold on my phone screen. I felt like I could scream at any moment, but instead I was completely frozen. This went on for several minutes. Eventually, she jumped off him and suggested they move to the bedroom, commenting that they still had some time left. They headed upstairs. She even mentioned how much time they had left. I walked into the living room and found the man's pants. I took his wallet and photographed his driver's license. Now I knew his name and address. I had never met him before and had no idea how my wife knew him. I exited the house the same way I came in. Back in my car, I broke down and cried. I felt utterly devastated. I decided to check the video to make sure it had recorded. I watched it in its entirety. I won't go into further detail, but I sat in my car for at least half an hour. I couldn't drive back to my parents to pick up the kids because I'd have to explain why I returned so quickly. I decided to pull into the driveway, open the garage, and pretend I was home to surprise my wife. I took my time entering the house, making plenty of noise. When she saw me, she looked flustered and asked why I was home so early. She was in a robe and said she was just getting ready for a bath. I told her about my plans, and she seemed genuinely excited. She poured us both a glass of wine and suggested we have a drink before getting ready. I don't think I talked much. She led me into the living room. I'm not proud of what happened next. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the man sneaking downstairs and heading toward the basement stairs, but I didn't say or do anything. I just let my wife continue. Since that day, I have watched the video of her with him repeatedly. I can't bring myself to make any decisions about what to do next. She seems to sense that something is wrong with me because she's asked a few times if I'm okay. I feel utterly worthless, and every time I hit a low point, I watch that video again. It seems like I've watched it at least 10 times a day since I caught them.